Linda Blair's screams during the bed thrashing scene are not acting. She fractured her spine and the crew kept filming. William Friedkin built cinema's greatest horror by erasing the line between fiction and reality. These are 20 hidden details you completely missed in The Exorcist. Number 20. When Father Merrin arrives in Georgetown, ancient and frail, stepping from the cab into lamplight, you are watching a 44-year-old man. Max von Sydow was barely a decade older than Jason Miller, who plays his younger colleague. Makeup artist Dick Smith stretched von Sydow's facial skin while applying liquid latex. When released, the rubber corrugated into lifelike wrinkles. Foam appliances covered his chin, cheeks, and upper lip. The process took 3 to 4 hours every morning. The Iraqi prologue was filmed in unforgiving direct sunlight. Compare the close-ups of Merrin's face in Iraq with photos of von Sydow from 1973. The transformation is total. The makeup accurately predicted what von Sydow would look like 40 years later in his 80s, but that iconic arrival shot hides an even deeper secret. Number 19. Father Merrin standing beneath the street lamp backlit by Regan's window is not just atmospheric cinematography. Friedkin deliberately recreated René Magritte's painting series L'Empire des Lumières, which depicts a house at night under a paradoxically daylit sky. The director allowed a full day to light the Georgetown street with arc lights and boosted practical street lamps. Cinematographer Owen Roizman shot the scene on the second night to capture that surreal contrast. Placed the Magritte painting beside the film frame. The silhouette, the lamp placement, the light-dark contrast mirror each other exactly. This was an art historical quotation designed to create cognitive dissonance between the serene sky and the horror below. Friedkin transformed a painting into a visual prophecy. The production design team knew something darker was coming and they left clues everywhere. Number 18. Regan's cheerful bedroom appears decorated with innocent child's painting. Look closer at the wall. The paintings depict the big bad wolf and Hansel and Gretel. Stories about predators disguised as trusted figures and children trapped by evil. Production designer Bill Malley chose these images deliberately. The witch's colors match Regan's wardrobe. The wolf shedding grandma's skin mirrors Pazuzu's infiltration of the child's body. Even more disturbing, the clay sculptures Regan makes as a hobby reappear later. Watch the desecrated Virgin Mary statue in the Georgetown church scene. Those additions are made of the same material, implying the possessed Regan, not a random vandal, committed the sacrilege. Freeze frame. When Chris enters the bedroom early in the film, these props were not decoration. They were foreshadowing what happens when trust becomes possession. Number 17. When Regan's head rotates 360 degrees, that sickening creak is not a sound effect library. Mexican sound designer Gonzalo Guevara created it by twisting an old leather wallet stuffed with credit cards against a microphone. Guevara spoke no English, but had worked on Alejandro Jodorowsky's El Topo. Watched the film, said through a translator that he understood it, then improvised sounds using whatever was nearby. Listen during the headspin sequence. The organic leathery quality is neither mechanical nor digital. You are hearing actual leather tearing against metal and plastic. According to Variety, doing a Guevara later entered the Mexican film industry as shorthand for inventing an audio trick on the spot. Friedkin trusted instinct over technology. That decision created one of horror's most unsettling sounds. Number 16. That delicate piano figure as Chris walks through Georgetown is now inseparable from the film. Friedkin spent 3 days digging through Warner Brothers' music library after rejecting 2 composers. He found an unlabeled white label record, the debut album on a brand new label called Virgin Records. Friedkin used only the opening minutes in an unusual 15/8 time signature that he found childlike. The piece appears exactly 3 times in the entire film. Watch for it during Chris walking home on Halloween, doctors suggesting exorcism, and Father Dyer overlooking the steps before the credits. Mike Oldfield, who composed and performed Tubular Bells at age 19, was initially unhappy with the association. The film drove his album to 15 million copies sold worldwide, but getting the perfect cast was an even bigger fight. Number 15. Ellen Burstyn as the sophisticated actress mother Chris McNeil seems inevitable now. The casting was a war. Audrey Hepburn wanted the role but insisted on shooting in Rome. Warner Brothers rejected that. Anne Bancroft was pregnant. Jane Fonda declined, though the famous Telegram story was debunked by writer William Peter Blatty himself. Shirley MacLaine, the actual model for the character in Blatty's novel, was rejected because she had just made a similar possession film. Then Friedkin and Blatty seriously pursued Carol Burnett, believing she had untapped dramatic range. The studio vetoed her. When Burstyn finally phoned Friedkin declaring she was destined for the role, studio head Ted Ashley lay down on the floor. He said Friedkin would have to walk over his body and would come back from the dead to prevent the casting. Number 14. Jason Miller's haunted portrayal of the crisis of faith priest feels authentic because it is. Miller was a Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright who had never appeared in a film. He studied to be a Jesuit priest for 3 years at Catholic University of America before experiencing a spiritual crisis, mirroring Father Karras exactly. When he read Blatty's novel, he called Friedkin and said that guy is me. Warner Brothers had already signed Stacy Keach to a contract. Miller took a train to Los Angeles for an uninvited screen test. Friedkin filmed Burstyn interviewing Miller about his real life, then asked him to say mass as if for the first time. The studio bought out Keach's contract. Watch Miller's devastated authenticity in the confession scene, knowing he genuinely prepared for priesthood. Number 13. That guttural, impossible voice of the possessed Regan belongs to Mercedes McCambridge, an Oscar-winning actress Orson Welles called the world's greatest living radio actress. Her 3-week recording sessions involve swallowing 18 raw eggs with a pulpy apple for vomiting sounds, chain smoking despite chronic bronchitis, and drinking whiskey despite being a recovering alcoholic. Sound engineer Jack Dowman bound her tightly to a chair so the voice sounded like it was struggling against restraints. Cambridge pulled a scarf around her own neck, nearly to strangulation for groaning sounds. She insisted that 2 Catholic priests be present during every session to grant her immediate absolution. She collapsed into their arms, crying after takes. Listen for the layered quality. Multiple McCambridge recordings are dubbed together with pig squeals and bee buzzing woven underneath. Number 12. When the words help me slowly emerge from beneath Regan's skin, you are watching practical chemistry, not visual effects. Dick Smith built a foam latex replica of Linda Blair's torso. He painted the letters onto the latex using cleaning fluid, which is paint thinner. The chemical reaction caused the foam to bubble and swell into raised letters. Smith then heated the blisters with a blow dryer, causing them to deflate back to flat. The entire sequence was filmed in reverse. When played backward in the final cut, the words appear to rise organically from within the skin. Watch the timing of the letters appearing. The slightly unnatural smoothness betrays the reverse filming technique. No computer-generated imagery, no optical effects, just chemistry, physics, and reverse photography. Number 11. The constant edge of fear on every actor's face throughout the film is not performance. Friedkin carried a gun on set and fired shotgun blanks randomly without warning to startle actors into genuine terror. His inspiration was director George Stevens, who did the same while directing The Diary of Anne Frank. Several reactions in the finished film are responses to gunfire, not acting. The scene where Father Karras suddenly turns at a ringing telephone shows Miller actually reacting to a rifle shot fired behind his head. Watch that phone-turning scene closely. The startled response engages his entire body in a way choreographed surprise never does. Miller confronted Friedkin afterwards, saying, "I am an actor and I did not need a gun to act surprised. It gets worse. He physically assaulted the cast." Number 10. Father Dyer administering last rites to the dying Karras, tears streaming down his face, is a real Jesuit priest delivering a real emotional breakdown. Father William O'Malley was not a trained actor and could not produce tears on command. Friedkin took him aside and asked, "Bill, do you love me?" O'Malley said, "Of course." Friedkin asked, "Do you trust me?" O'Malley said, "Of course." Friedkin turned away, then struck him full in the face, pushed him in front of the camera, and said, "Action." O'Malley delivered a shattered performance in one take. Afterward, he hugged Friedkin and thanked him, saying there was no other way he could have reached that emotional state. Look closely at O'Malley's reddened face and unsteady breathing in the scene. The violence against lead actors was calculated and brutal. Number 9. When possessed Regan backhands Chris across the room and Chris lands hard, screaming, "That is not acting." Burstyn was wearing a harness operated by special effects supervisor Marcel Vercouteri. After the first take, she told Friedkin the wire was pulling too hard. Friedkin said he would fix it, but she saw him and Vercouteri exchange a look. On the next take, the wire pulled harder. Burstyn flew across the room and landed on her coccyx, fracturing it. Her scream of pain is genuine. Rather than calling cut, Friedkin directed cinematographer Owen Roizman to zoom in on her face. Watch the landing. Her body hits at an angle no stunt coordinator would design. Her face immediately shows shock, not performance. Burstyn was on crutches for weeks, and the injury affects her to this day. Number 8. When possessed, Regan projectile vomits into Father Karras' face. That look of pure disgust on Jason Miller is completely authentic. The vomit was porridge mixed with Anderson's split pea soup and green food coloring, not pure pea soup as the legend claimed. A thin plastic tube ran from Blair's mouth down her nightgown to a hand-cranked pump operated by a crew member on the floor. Friedkin rehearsed the shot with the stream hitting Miller's chest. When the camera rolled, it hit him squarely in the face. Miller believed the tube was deliberately adjusted. Watch Miller's eyes closely. The disgust registers a fraction of a second before his acting response kicks in. One take was all they needed. Miller had a verbal confrontation with Friedkin immediately after. Number 7. The film's sparse, unsettling soundscape of Krzysztof Penderecki, George Crumb, and Anton Webern was not the original plan. Friedkin first hired Bernard Herrmann, Alfred Hitchcock's legendary composer. Herrmann told him, "I might be able to help you with this piece of garbage." That collaboration fell apart. Then Friedkin hired Lalo Schifrin, who had scored Mission Impossible and Bullet. Friedkin asked for chamber music. Schifrin arrived at the recording session session with 80 musicians and a full orchestral score that was brassy, percussive, and loud. According to multiple accounts, Friedkin literally threw Schifrin's audio reels out a studio window. Schifrin later called it one of the most unpleasant experiences of my life. The rejected score has since been commercially released. Number 6. Those blink and miss it flashes of a ghastly white face throughout the film belong to Eileen Dietz, a 27-year-old actress serving as Linda Blair's stunt double. The white-faced Captain Howdy look was originally a rejected makeup test by Dick Smith, deemed too extreme for the possessed Regan. Friedkin found the image so disturbing he spliced it into the film as subliminal flashes lasting 3 frames, which is 1/8 of a second at 24 frames per second. The 1973 theatrical cut contained only 2 to 3 flashes, primarily in Karras's dream sequence and during the exorcism. The 2000 re-release added significantly more. Watch for key timestamps. At 45 minutes and 1 second, Karras's dream shows the original 1973 flash. At 56 minutes and 3 seconds, the kitchen scene shows the most recognizable placement. Number 5. When Regan thrashes violently in bed, screaming in demonic agony, those are real screams of pain. Blair was strapped to a mechanically rigged steel bed. During one take, the harness lacing came loose. She was thrown about far more violently than intended, fracturing her lower spine. Blair later recounted on the documentary series Cursed Films, "I am crying. I am screaming. They think I am acting up a storm. It fractured my lower spine. No, they did not send me to the doctor. It is the footage that is in the movie." Her cries of "please make it stop, it hurts, it burns" were genuine but coincidentally mirrored her scripted lines. The crew kept filming. The injury eventually developed into scoliosis with lifelong chronic pain. Blair was 13 years old. Number 4. Around 2:30 in the morning on a Sunday, a bird flew into a circuit breaker at CECO Studios in Manhattan, starting a fire that destroyed the entire McNeil house interior set. Every room burned except Regan's bedroom, the room where the exorcism takes place. Friedkin received a 4 a.m. phone call saying, "You are not going to believe this, but the whole set has burned to the ground." The fire caused a 6-week production delay and cost roughly $500,000 to rebuild. The survival of only the demon's room was considered eerie. Cast anxiety led Friedkin to ask technical advisor Father Thomas Birmingham to exorcise the set. Birmingham declined, saying an exorcism would increase anxiety. The chaos extended to the censorship battle that nearly killed the film's release. Number 3. The film contains extremely controversial content involving a minor that shocked 1973 audiences, yet MPAA ratings board head Aaron Stern watched the finished film and told Friedkin it was an important film, granting an R rating with 0 cuts required. The decision provoked immediate outrage. Roger Ebert wrote that it receiving an R and not an X is stupefying. Critic Pauline Kael wrote in The New Yorker that if The Exorcist had cost under $1 million or been made abroad, it would almost certainly be an X film. District attorneys in Boston and Washington independently slapped the film with local X rating. The rating decision effectively redrew the boundaries of what mainstream American cinema could show. Number 2. In the medical examination scene, a technician helps perform Regan's diagnostic procedure with calm professional precision. That radiologic technologist visible in the sequence is Paul Bateson, a real X-ray technician at NYU Medical Center who was cast for authenticity. In 1979, 6 years after the film's release, Bateson was convicted of murdering journalist Addison Verrell. He became a prime suspect in a string of unsolved homicides in New York City. Watch the medical examination sequence. Bateson is visible operating equipment alongside the doctors, his face calm and focused. Friedkin was so disturbed by the revelation that he later used Bateson's case as partial inspiration for his 1980 film Cruising, starring Al Pacino. Bateson was paroled in 2003 after serving 24 years. Number 1. When you see visible breath pouring from every actor's mouth during the exorcism scene, that is not a special effect. Friedkin ordered Regan's bedroom set refrigerated to -20 degrees Fahrenheit using industrial cooling equipment. The set was not cooled with air conditioners because those remove moisture, and visible breath requires moisture in the air. The temperature was maintained at sub-zero for weeks at a time. Blair, wearing only a thin costume, worked in these conditions for nearly a month of filming, completing only about 5 shots per day. Watch the breath in the exorcism scenes closely. It has a density and irregularity that computer effects lack. It responds to speech patterns, lingers, and dissipates naturally because it is real. Blair has said the experience affected her relationship with cold temperatures permanently. The Exorcist is not just cinema's greatest horror film. It is a documentary about building a masterpiece through extreme production methods. The boundary between performance and reality was deliberately erased. The production became as intense as the story itself. Which hidden detail surprised you most? And what film should we open next?